Good morning. My name is Isabella Piacenti, and I will be your moderator today. Our debate topic, who is the best American president? Our candidates today, Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Mr. Woodrow Wilson. Although today our time is short and we will not have time for an opening or closing speech from either candidate, I hope you will consider their points all the same. During this debate today, there will be 3 questions, and both candidates will have the opportunity to answer all questions. There will also be time allotted to refute or respond to the other candidate's claims. For each question, we will alternate who answers first, although both candidates, again, will have a chance to respond. For our first question, we have for Mr. Woodrow Wilson. Given the current situation, the pandemic of 2020, how do you feel the government is handling the situation? And how would you respond if you were president?
Good question. Good question. As president, one must do things to fix problems. And in my own experience, as I once was president, I would do things such as
Spanish flu.
What I do believe my esteemed colleague is trying to say is that he would revert back to his original policy of 1917. Do nothing. In 1917, America was in the grip of war and the Spanish flu. However, Mr. Woodrow and his administration failed to mention any of this to the public. Not even in the month of October 1918, when 195,000 Americans had perished due to the disease. Instead, he created the Committee of Public Information. This was a week after declaring war, and it sought to downplay any negative news. Because of him, thousands of Americans died, and he did nothing to stop it.
Now that's not fair. I was president during a war and an epidemic. I had a lot to handle, thus I decided it would be imperative I focused my direction on...
I think it's perfectly reasonable to look to a president during times of uncertainty. Why, it's our job to provide for this nation and lead it through times both good and bad. In the 1930s, Americans looked to me to guide them through the Great Depression, and I provided support and stability for them through my programs through the New Deal. However, most importantly, I provided communication between the government and the people. My fireside chats kept the Americans involved and informed of what was happening in their own government. This decreased anxiety and increased trust in our government.
Now, Mr. Roosevelt, I was dealing with war and the flu. You had one major issue to focus on. I do believe perspective is important.
Mr. Wilson, if I may add, you're not the first president to deal with sickness and war simultaneously. In fact, it was actually our first president of the United States, Mr. George Washington, who dealt with the smallpox outbreak and the American Revolution. He actually instated policies of social distancing to keep the smallpox from spreading between the troops. And there was a quarantine smallpox hospital near a pond near Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Now, Franklin, just answer the question so we can move on.
Mr. Wilson, I see you are once again trying to sweep the talk of pandemic under the rugs. This is unacceptable. We do not want a repeat of 1917, and I personally know the extent to which a virus can attack the human body. Therefore, it is of the utmost importance that we educate our citizens onto the extent that the pandemic can affect them. After, we can work with volunteers. These volunteers will be trained so that they may alleviate the pressure that is put on our hospital system.
For question 2, we will have Mr. FDR answer first.
Both Mr. Wilson and Mr. Roosevelt have led America at war. Mr. Wilson in the First World War on April 6, 1917, and Mr. Roosevelt, you in the Second World War on December 8, 1941. What do you believe was your greatest international accomplishment? My greatest international accomplishment? I would have to say this was a joint contribution between myself and my colleagues, Mr. Winston Churchill and Harry Hopkins. We drafted the Declaration of the UN. The term United Nations I had coined when having a conversation with other allied nations about an international peacekeeping organization to ensure there was not a future major conflict. Our document was then signed and agreed upon by 26 other countries on January 1st, 1942, during the Arcadia Conference, and it was put into place and operation on the 24th of October, 3 years later, 1945.
How unoriginal and how uncouth of you to not give credit where source credit is due. My 14th-point speech in 1918 was the original outline for war aims, which would promote lasting peace, called for self-determination, reduction of arms, and a League of Nations, which would be an international organization after World War I to prevent future wars.
Mr. Wilson, I do believe the question was concerning our greatest accomplishment, not our greatest thought bubble. We never joined the League of Nations, which means your dream never came to fruition. And dare I say it's because of your lack of ability to stick to your own plan? For our final question of the day, Mr. Woodrow Wilson, you will answer first. Looking back on your presidency, how do you feel you delivered your promises to the American people?
I do believe that I kept my promises to the American people. In my war speech to Congress on April 2nd, 1917, I called the U.S. government as one of the champions of the rights of mankind, and I proclaimed the world must be made safe for democracy, and I did just that. I spread democracy to the countries worldwide, Mexico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Nicaragua, so that they too may enjoy the fruits of democracy.
Oh, okay. So I guess the oil you took from Mexico when you invaded, the bank revenue you collected from Haiti and the Dominican, those were just coincidental bonuses, right?
Well, you see, that was just,
Okay, wait. You can't forget your famous campaign slogan, "He kept us out of war." You know, you might want to talk to the campaign managers about that one, or like your promoters or something, because I'm not like sure it fits, but you do you. I had once promised the American people a new deal, a promise I had made before I was elected in office in 1932, but nevertheless one I fulfilled. I put forth 15 New Deal programs, social and economic reforms. It attacked the effects of the Great Depression, and in its wake, unemployment decreased and trust in our government increased.
Thank you, Mr. FDR, and thank you, Mr. Woodrow Wilson.
And thank you for listening to our debate today.